The stomachache got worse and she was diagnosed with appendicitis. That was sorted, but months after that the pain didn't go away and it started to drift down her right leg. It was in her groin, it was behind her knee. As the months went by, she was having to walk with crutches. We saw doctor after doctor. They constantly said, the pain is in your head, there's nothing the matter. Her leg turned blue, it was black. There was no pulse, it was treble in size, and it was only since we moved up here that we actually wrote to vascular surgeons to see if anybody could help. Because she was suicidal, she couldn't go on the way she was. There was a professor in Hull that said, yes, I will amputate it. There was no nerves when she went into the hospital. She couldn't wait to get on with her life and to get a prosthetic leg and learn to walk again and maybe even run one day. And she's achieved that.
We're going to chat about her life. We're going to talk about her story. We're going to talk about the upcoming World Cup in Colombia, which she travels off to next week, which is a very exciting time in her life to be part of. And can't wait to talk about that later on within the episode. But part of the reason that we got Tayla on here today is because she has a very heart-wrenching and honest story, which is very open, is very honest, and is something that is at times maybe difficult for others to listen to, because what Tayla went through mentally and physically as well, but the mental side of it was really harrowing at such a young age, starting at the age of 15. But before we get into that sort of journey, Tayla was interested in football from a very young age, and you were inspired by your dad, is that correct?
Yeah, I was.
So as you started playing, you played lots of different sports when you were younger. Any sports that you could particularly participate in, you tended to take part in those sports?
Yeah, 100%. I was always a sporty person. Yeah, I grew up loving football, watching football, going to watch Arsenal. So I'm an avid Arsenal supporter. And yeah, and then I did all different sports in like school and everything until obviously I couldn't.
It's a shame that you support Arsenal. You know, I very much liked you until we started having that conversation. But no, it's good because you had those experiences in terms of, you know, going and watch Arsenal play, playing sports, participating yourself, being inspired or having that love of it because of your dad. So there's that family connection, there's that fan connection, and then there's that participant connection. So it's already three different sort of attributes towards your experience, which you have and can take away, and how you impact that within your coaching, which we'll get on to later. But you've grown up then, you started playing football, you played various sports, and then unfortunately at the age of 15 you started having some health concerns and feeling within your leg. And do you want to touch upon that more and open up about that experience from you, and then I'll pitch in with a bit more around that?
Yeah, I mean, it all started when I was 13. They don't know like what caused it. They say a trauma causes it, but I didn't have a trauma. The only thing I had out was I had my appendix out, but it never like affected my stomach or my thighs or anything. So I started having pain in like my groin, and then it just got worse and worse. I was told that I was making it up. It was all in my head. So the doctors just left me. So 6 years down the line, I was still suffering. Obviously, I was very suicidal because it was just like no one was listening to me. No one wanted to help. And it got to the point where I couldn't bend or move my leg or my ankle, and it was black and purple. I had no pulse in the foot, yet they still turned around and said that it was fine. But I had the disease called complex regional pain syndrome, but also known as the suicide disease, because it's like breaking every bone in your body all the time, because it's all to do with the nerves. So wind, bed sheets, water, like anything touching my leg, I was in agony. So 6 years of suffering. And I was like, but I still want to live, and I still want to, you know, carry on with my life. So in the end, we ended up sending off emails to different hospitals, different doctors. And then loads came back, but we ended up going to a professor in Hull, and he took one look at my leg and was like, if you were my daughter, I'd have it amputated. So it was like, wow, someone's finally listening to me. So yeah, it was my choice to have it amputated, and it was the best decision I ever made.
So there's quite a lot within that, and there's quite a lot to sort of unpack. And one of the things around that, right, is um, when they said it's all in your head, right, and it is a trauma, you know, based experience, but you haven't had any trauma. In a way, in your head, do you ever want to have an answer to that? Because it's sort of an answer saying, "All right, it's trauma based," but you never had that trauma. So, what is the realistic answer? And I know they can never really give you that, but is that in the back of your mind somewhere of going, "I wish I had that answer somewhere"?
Yeah, it was near the beginning, because it was just like you always want to know what caused it and what's wrong, because it's that gives you peace of mind. So yeah, I did in the beginning, but like now, 5 years down the line, I'm like, it happened for a reason. I'm a better person because of it. I wouldn't be doing what I am doing if I didn't have it off, or, you know, I'm such a different person to what I am now than when I was then.
And you know, obviously, we're going to talk about those changes in terms of that mental and physical sort of pressures that you might have faced when you were younger, but also that progression in terms of being that different person which you are now, right? And I think that's a very interesting story of how we all change over time, but especially from adverse experiences. And obviously, when you experience something at a young age, at the age of 13, right, where you're experiencing these pains for the first time, you're very young within yourself. You're about a year into high school. You're finding, you know, growth about yourself, you know, physically. You're looking at the mental demand. You're changing in your studies. You're finding friendship groups, you're playing sport, and then bang, this health issue sort of hits you, right? And then your life takes a very different trajectory, which is not known for many, you know, 13-year-olds, but for anyone in life, that would be very difficult. But being a young 13-year-old where our minds haven't fully developed, our emotions are still, you know, in that growth stage as well, that must have been a very, very difficult time for a young 13-year-old, 14, 15, to go and experience these after high school or a day in school, and to be at home and to be having these pains, and then to go to, you know, a doctor, etc., and go, oh, I need this help, or what can you look into for me, or, you know, any of those types of questions. And they all come back with, you know, it's in your head, or we can't support you in this, and these sort of comebacks. That must have been the most frightening and most frustrating period in your life.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was very, very hard, mentally and physically. I mean, I ended up like hardly going to school. In year 10, year 11, I was only there half days because I just couldn't cope with the sitting or the pain. My friends all left me, because again, they thought I was just on crutches for the sake of it, making it up, because I couldn't tell them what was wrong with me because the doctors weren't telling me. So it was just like, just kept going on and on. So yeah, and then obviously I was bed bound, and it was very tough mentally. I mean, I look back now and I'm like, I don't know how I got through it. But there's obviously something in me that kept me going, and I think it is my determination and my drive to want to achieve more. And yeah, it was tough on my parents as well, because my mum ended up being my full-time carer because I just couldn't do anything. Like I couldn't wash, dress myself. So it was really tough for them as well, being a parent, seeing their child in pain.
And I think what I read from that is there was times when mum was putting on your socks, right? And then even then you were crying in pain because of what you're experiencing. And now for mum internally, she has to be the very strong person in that scenario for her daughter, for someone so young, putting on that sock, and, you know, you're bursting in tears and crying, right? But she's trying to hold that internally because she doesn't perhaps want to break down in front of you, because
Yeah.
she has to be that very strong mold for you to see that as well, especially through this journey. But for mum, it must have been a very, very difficult period of time for her to go through, for A, you know, what she was experiencing emotionally, and then B, the frightening thought of something happening to her child, to her daughter, whereby she might have to have something removed from her physically. That is not something a parent wants to hear, especially for a child of a very young age, right? So mum must have had a very, you know, traumatic time in terms of this experience, but must be so strong as well to have been there through that experience with you.
Yeah, she is. She's our rock, because obviously my dad's had health issues as well, and then I've had mine. So yeah, she's been through a lot, and she's really helped all of us. And like, she's my best friend now. Like, she's always there for me. I'm always there for her, and like, she just couldn't be proud of the person that I've become. And it's just nice to be able to kind of give back in a way, and not have her always look after me. So to have my independence is amazing now.
That is so lovely, especially when you talk about giving back to mum, it, because that can be something which is taken for granted by some people. But it's the fact that you've recognised that, but it's like, well, actually, now, mum, it's time for me to give back to you, which is so touching, and it's so lovely the way that you talk about her being your rock, being your best friend. I think that is such a heartwarming moment to hear those you know, comments about your mum and the support that she had. And when you say about dad having health issues as well, again, if you layer that on top, then it just means that when you look back, how, you know, the way that you said, I don't know how I got through it myself, you know, the same question must be for mum as well in her own
Yeah.
mind, because of what she went through. So I think when you get those levels of determination which you talk about, I think there's a bit of your mum rubbing off on you there, if not all of her, because she must have had those internally every day, and naturally it's rubbed off on you.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely some, we're very good people. We've got that determination in us. And like, they both feared that one day they would wake up and I wouldn't be here, because they knew how bad the pain was and how much I was suffering. And they said to me, like, if you ever did that and you did commit suicide, we would never hold that against you, because we know you were suffering. But yeah, it was really tough. But yeah, we just had to keep going and keep getting those answers, and we eventually got there. And yeah, like I said, it was my choice, because they did turn around and say that even having an amputation it wouldn't get rid of the pain. But I was like, anything's better than what I've got now, because I'm carrying around a dead weight. Like, even if it was gone and I still had pain, I could still be able to do more than what I could then.
And the way you say that phrase or quote here, right? If you committed suicide, we would never hold that against you. Now, to have those sort of discussions again at a very young age is very, very tough, both for parents to even perhaps mentally prepare themselves every day of going, yeah, Tayla might do this. This
Mm.
could happen. We might be childless in terms of we're going to lose her in life. And even for you, the fact that you contemplated suicide and no suicidal thoughts, but even when the doctors labelled it as the suicide disease, right? That is a horrible sort of expression to have in reality, because yes, it is complex regional pain syndrome, and you can deal with that, right? And there's a lot of syndromes out there, and deal with it in a way where you can prepare for it, where you know the worst might happen, whereby, as you said, that conversation with mum and dad happened, right? But even for them to label it as, all right, this is a suicide disease, and even for when you start researching it yourself at a young age and perhaps understanding it more, that must have been so tough to read, the fact that, all right, I'm looking for help, but actually my worst case scenario, or maybe best case in that reality, right, in the way you're thinking, if X doesn't happen, then, you know, this might happen. It's a very tough sort of mindset to even explore or comprehend the fact that you've contemplated suicide, and even having a discussion with your parents where you're a level of enabling it, but be sort of planning for it. That must be so tough.
Yeah, it was really tough, and like you say, and the more you research about it, because it's not a well-known disease, it's so well, it's just not known. So it's like doctors didn't know anything, and so yeah, it is really tough because you hear more stories than not of people taking their life because of how bad it is, or having the amputation and then still being worse off. And it is tough because you just never know. And yeah, obviously we did have those conversations, and it was tough because I was young and everything. But like I said, there was something in me that was always stopping me, because I just wanted to carry on, and I knew that I couldn't do that to my parents because they would be childless.
Mm. And I think that's something which touches with me. And I think from the way you say that, I think A is morally and B is a religious reason, right? Where when you said you don't think you could have done that for your parents, the fact that you would have continued to experience pain, or even have gone through the worst of the worst in that journey of the harrowing experiences which you would have had, you would have done that for the love of your parents, which I think is very commendable. But also the fact of the love and that bond. And when you say within you, the love, the bond, the determination, the family essence, the commitment, I think they're all unreal qualities which really define you, and have really put you where you are now. The fact that you could have taken your life at a teenage sort of era, right, of yourself, and perhaps we might not even be having, well, we wouldn't be having this conversation today, but yet here we are, and you're inspiring others. And I know you don't like to be labeled as inspiring others at times, but you do naturally do that, right? Even just by listening to you, it is right. You're working for the Wolves Foundation, you're studying at uni, you're flying off to a World Cup next week. You have incredible sort of outlets in your life right now at still a very young age, and it's incredible in terms of what you've got in front of you and how far you can go with things. Even if you said, right, I don't want to spread a story about this, or even if I don't want to completely fight for this syndrome in terms of waiting for a charity, I want to completely focus on football, and that is my narrative, and go and focus on that, you're still achieving something incredible. But the fact that you are inspiring others, and you are working with individuals with disabilities themselves, the fact that you're working at academy groups, the fact that you're exploring and learning through university, when you said in the fact that you didn't know if you was ever going to return to education, what an incredible story at such a young age, between what happened at the age of 13 to the ages of 24 and where you're at now.
Yeah, it is, like you say, I don't see myself as an inspiring person because I'm just doing what I love and what I want to do. I mean, no one ever helped me when I was an amputee. When I started, like I didn't know anyone, so it was about just getting out there and being a part of others, and that's why I want to give back to others so they don't have to go through what I went through. And that's how I do it. And yeah, I just do what I do because I love what I do. So I know so many people say that I am inspiring and I do this and I do that, but yeah, I just do it because I want to do it, you know?
There's another quality, humble, right? Being very humble, right? And I think when you get to do that in terms of what you love every day, in terms of what inspires you, and doing that very naturally, and others looking at inspiration, I think that is something which you can take naturally within your stride. And people will look up to you, and will see you coaching, you studying, what you're achieving, right, and continuing in terms of what you're going to do. So I think it comes very natural, and when you have natural people within those environments, I think they have such a significance in the story which they bring to them, the impact which they have, and the story and inspiration which they give to others. So, first off, keep on doing what you're doing, because I think you're on a very exciting pathway towards what the future looks like in terms of coaching, and in terms of what your long-term aspirations are, which we're gonna come back round to later on in the episode. But when you talk about the fact that your friends left you right at a young age, now you're in your 20s now, have any of them ever reached out to you and said, I can't believe we stopped talking, I can't believe I didn't believe you, I can't believe I didn't do this? Or have they just never got back in touch, or have you just completely closed that off and gone, right, my life is in a very different place now?
No, none of them really, like, they've seen what's happened and where I am now, but they never like got in touch and said like, how are you? And this, that, the other. I mean, you get the odd one that was like, oh, I'm proud of where you are now. And it's like, thanks, but like you wasn't there when I needed you the most. Like I've never had that like best friend that I've needed and wanted to help in all that way. Um, so yeah, it's been tough, and obviously I moved up to Staffordshire to be closer to my family because my mum's from up here. And yeah, it was so hard because I wasn't in education or anything. It's been tough to make friends and everything. So it's yeah, it was just about getting out there, and obviously now I have friends all over. But yeah, I have closed that off in terms of like, well, they clearly weren't friends if they're not going to be there for me in my worst. So it was just like, it is what it is kind of thing.
And it is hard to accept that and to look back and to accept it is what it is. But at the end of the day, sometimes you have to go, it is what it is, and just accept that and move on. Because as you say there, it is nice that you've got a nice social group and nice that you do have friends now. It's nice that, in part of the England squad that you might meet some girls and have a great relationship, or you might get along with the coaches and you have that social environment, and you might, chat to one of the girls after the World Cup. You might stay in touch and, chat, and you've met all sorts of different people, and you might play against other nations in terms of that. You might reach out to someone who's living out in South Africa, for example, or someone who lives, in Japan or whatever, right? And you're making contacts through this. But for you to look back upon and go, right, I missed out on those social connections, or I didn't have that best friend, which is very, again, heartbreaking to hear, especially at someone at a young age, and especially someone who have gone through what you've gone through. There is always that sort of gap which is missing in your life, which I think still has a part to play as we get older, whereby we feel that we might not have a social connection to other people, whereby we might always be feeling a sense of loss, and it might be hard to establish those social connections, but we're always reaching out for one. And I think that's some of the hardest part at times when we go seeking social connections from other people or other situations, and we perhaps don't get the response which we're looking for, or perhaps don't feel that we're connected in a situation. That can be very hard and difficult to deal with at certain points as well. But now you're being part of the England squad, which is again very exciting, and we're going to open up more as we progress on. Are you looking forward to being with a different group of girls? Is it very difficult to sort of go into a situation and, you're sitting in that dressing room or that environment or a team meeting, right? You perhaps got 10 to 15 other players around you. You're like, I don't know you, I don't know you, I don't know you. But the exciting part is I would like to get to know you. I'm going to get to know you. How does that sort of feel and look? Is there a bit of apprehension towards going into that camp?
Well, I mean, my dad said this the other day, that although I missed out on like all that social stuff, he can see that I've like grown confident in terms of talking to people, and like I'm the type of person that I will talk to anyone and I will tell my story to anyone. Always want to, help people and get to know people. So in a way, when I actually first went to the first camp, I wasn't nervous or anything. It was just all about, these are my people. These are going to be my family, because we all have something in common and we all know each other so well, in terms of if we've got a certain pain, they can sympathize, and this, that, the other. So it was more about the togetherness and like the family bond that we have now. So yeah, it's incredible to have that.
I really like the way that you have that togetherness and you have that family bond, because that's how I like my environments as a coach to be, and very much one that I like to be part of when I'm in certain environments, and i.e. work, and when I'm teaching and in education, is that there is that family environment where we can rely on each other, where we come together, where we have pastoral moments where we discuss each other's issues. Someone might have said how difficult their day is, but we're the connected group who is tightened together, where we can share those stories, and we're going to be there to support each other. And despite those difficult days, that we know we have those those pastoral groups or, you know, form registrations and classes whereby we are connected, and you're not going to have a hard moment within this period. We're here to support you. We're perhaps going to destabilize some of the tough moments. We're going to have that enjoyment, those social interactions. We're going to have a bit of fun with it, whilst learning within the process in terms of education itself. But it's good that you've grown in confidence. It's great that your dad has been able to observe and seen that within you as well, because again, when you look at that parent sort of perspective, you know, he's obviously seen the confidence being taken away from you. He's seen that, you know, social elements and you know, perhaps the times when you've been in the teenage years missing out on moments where, you know, a typical teenager might have those moments, and they can be very difficult as a parent to process at times as well. But you know, it's great for him now to sort of have that come back into him in a way where you are taking confidence, whereby you have new groups around you, where you have a supported network, where you're going off and exploring the world and you're having new experiences. And they're very exciting times for him as a parent. And he can sit back and go, oh, look, there's Tayla, look, she's playing in this game today. Or look, there's an interview with her and she's chatting to some of the other players from the opposition. They're very heartwarming moments, and there's some very exciting moments to come ahead. Now, I'm sure he's feeling a little bit of he's exploring a lot of different emotions, whereby, you know, it's very scary you going off to a World Cup, and you know, it's very scary you meeting new people and perhaps being in these pressurized environments, and you're looking at these game situations. And I think they're very natural to any parent, right? But he can actually go, do you know what, she's there, she's enjoying herself, she's having a great experience. And I think that's something that you and him can really take away together. But, you know, we've explored, you know, obviously these health issues at a very young age. We've explored the perhaps lack of socialism and the impacts that it's had on you, and the lack of a best friend. We've explored the fact that you've gone through pain and what mum and dad have gone through to support you in that family environment. And we've looked at some of the internal qualities which you've had, and what keeps you going into where you're at now. But there's just one more moment where we've had all these sort of like bumps and barriers and little things in the road, right, where to get you where you are now, you've explored and experienced those. But then COVID became an impact for you as well, because you were having physio, and physio obviously was a very important time for you, for the social connection and getting out and perhaps you know, exploring and doing different things, and having that recovery and you know, having the essential recovery for you. But they all halted as a result of COVID. Now, how difficult was that for you when they did halt, and what were you doing to sort of replace physio at that time?
Yeah, because I had my amputation in September 2019. Obviously, by the March 20, yeah, COVID hit. So, yeah, all my physio stopped. I couldn't see anyone. So, again, being the person I am, I was like, I'm not going to just sit on my bum and do nothing and wait for them. I was like, I'm going to have to do it myself. So, I was literally just walking around my block, building myself up, and obviously that was with 2 sticks to begin with, then it was 1, and then I was walking on my own. So it was just all about just keeping going and having that drive to want to achieve more. And I think it really, you know, I benefited it a lot, because if I hadn't have done anything, I wouldn't be where I am today, because it would have slowed me down so much.
And I hope you don't mind me asking, right? So you've had this amputation, and you know, we'll explore a little bit more in a moment about this sort of thought process as I expand it. But do you still experience any levels of pain now at any point?
In the beginning, I had a bit of phantom pain, but I think that was kind of normal, because you've just had it off and you're experiencing all these different feelings. But no, I've been very, very lucky that like the CRPS has gone. I get the odd like tingling, like, you know, when you get pins and needles like in your foot. I get them in my stump, which hurts when you're walking. But apart from that, I've been very, very lucky. And yeah, I've been able to just get on and do anything and everything.
Because when you were coaching, I believe it was, that you were identified as someone who could play for the amputee squad, right? And there was a little bit of hesitance from your side, because there was you had that hesitance in terms of there could be a concern that if your stump was unsupported, it could reactivate the disease. Now that, it can be very exciting in terms of having an approach to go and play for a squad and to be part of that social environment and do something new and overcome perhaps the biggest adversity which you've experienced, but also a level of being very scared within that, because you're like, this could return, this could impact me, this could actually be detrimental rather than being something very exciting. So when you had that hesitance and then you actually said, no, I'm going to do this, what was that sort of process like for you? And were mum and dad like, no, don't do this, look what you've already gone through, perhaps it's best just not to? Or were they like, it's your decision? How did that look at that time?
It was all, they've always been supported in any way with what I do and what I've done. So they were all behind me. And it was more the fact that obviously, because I thought I'd never play again, I went down the coaching route, which I still want to do. I still want to achieve. But because of coaching, you're in that environment. So I still had that drive and willingness to want to play. So technically I can play on my prosthetic, but you can't do it. It's not well known to want to play on it, and you can't do or be in certain leagues. So it's not really ideal. So again, I didn't want to be back on crutches because I was on them for 6 years. So the thought of being on them again, it was daunting, and it was like, oh God. But yeah, because of still wanting to play, I didn't even think about, obviously I knew what the doctors and everything had said about it could come back if it was dangling. So I knew I needed support on my stump, which was fine. I just wear my liner and a sock over it, and I didn't think about, like, it was kind of in the back of my head, but not, because obviously if you think about it too much, then it's going to affect you more. So I was more obviously always positive, always wanting to do stuff and achieve more. So yeah, I went and gave it a go, and luckily I've never been in pain, and I haven't looked back, and yeah, I'm where I am now.
Well, I'm glad that the pain hasn't come back, and absolute prayers and wishes that it never comes back at any point, right? Because that would be the worst, sort of experience then to go through. In terms of that response of something that should be very exciting and something which is very enjoyable as well. But I think it's important, as you say there, is that you perhaps don't think about it too much, because that might deter you from playing altogether, and therefore you might not be flying out next week. And even if you play only in one squad and you perhaps don't get selected, or you choose never to re-elect to be part of a squad in the future, you still have that one isolated experience to you, which is still very incredible and still very unique to you. But hopefully, whatever your ambitions are beyond this squad or in football, you can go on and achieve and continue to have those different experiences. But it's when you enter that field for the first time and you perhaps had some of these 4 elements, and even then when you step over the white line and you're on the pitch for the first time, or whatever pitch you're playing on, right, that thought must just slightly tweak in your head of, oh, this is happening now, there's no going back, but there might still be this risk, but I have to not think about that. I have to think about the enjoyment of this game. And I think that is perhaps the thought process you had the first time you played.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we all kind of have that in some way, all of us girls, because we all have something in common, but obviously all of our conditions are all different. So some still have pain, some don't, and this, that, the other. So we all do stuff a certain way. So yeah, it still is always in the back of my head, but it's always, yeah, it's way back. I don't want to think about it too much, because yeah, thinking about it too much will make me want to not play, because yeah, you're gonna think, oh, what if? And you don't want to think the what if. You just want to carry on, live your life. Life's too short. You've just got to do everything you possibly can, which is what I've done. I mean, I was told I could never go horse riding, I could never go like on high ropes or zip lining, but obviously I proved everyone wrong, and I did it, because if someone says that you can't do something, I'm going to do it,
And I think that's the important mindset, which is something which spurs you on. And it's one of those where, not in the same sort of level of you're thinking about things, but when we do coaching, right, and you get assessed on different parts of your coaching, and that is one of my biggest bugbears and frustrations, because you're being assessed on a set criteria, and but you're being told ways that you can improve it, which I completely agree with, but you're being told that your session should look this way to meet the criteria. And I'm like, if every coach went through that, then we wouldn't have a diversity in coaches, and therefore we perhaps wouldn't see your Jose Mourinho's, your Jurgen Klopp's, your Serena Wiegmans, because they'd all have very set ways in coaching in a very different way, in a certain way, whereas they're very different in what they do. And I think that's the thing with me, is when I'm in those situations, like, why can't we do this? Why can't it be that way? You tell me why it has to be that certain way. And I think that mindset is important for anything that we do in life, because we have to break down those barriers. We have to go on and want to achieve more. And it's certainly going to push us to do things. So when I touch upon you playing for England now, and even though you've been called up, you've got this experience coming up, have you set yourself goals and ambitions for you to go and say, right, I want to play X amount of games, or I want to play an X amount of World Cups? Is that sort of entered your mind, or is it about looking at this forthcoming camp and then deciding from there?
Yeah, I think it's more about living in the moment, being where we are now. Obviously, this is just the beginning and the start, because it's obviously the very first one. We're very new, we're very excited. So yeah, it's just all about a process. Like, we're going to do everything we can, but obviously it's a process, so whatever happens, and we just want it to get the coverage, and people to see it and know that just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't play, which I feel very strongly about, because like you say, it is about breaking down those barriers, and letting people know that you can still do it and achieve these things. And then it's just all about going on from there, and hopefully having more camps, hopefully getting a women's league starting, and going into the Champions League as well. So it's all exciting times, and it's all all a process.
I think it's very important to have that mindset and breaking down barriers, and to look at what the future says there. But with the way that you're speaking there, all I hear was opportunity, 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 underpinned by excitement, right? Because there's a lot for you even to get involved in. Even if you start, presenting at, say, conferences, or you're being part of a team which is, establishing league for girls and women and amputees, and, lots of different sort of segments which can open up, right? And there's a lot of different diversity which can really be explored, and you could be one of the advocates of that, or you could be guest speaker, or alongside playing, alongside being a coach within that. I think there's many different sort of routes and opportunities where you could have an impact, and even in 20 years in the future, where you might be very retired, you might be enjoying life and just coaching, right, and you was just watching football on the TV, but you might be looking at players playing and going, you know what, I was one of the enablers of them, and look at where they're at now, and I was part of that story, and look at the history I've segmented, and that comes very natural in terms of what you're doing. So I think rather than you going out and having that aspiration of being a history maker, I think that's going to happen very naturally from you just taking it day by day and having that flipper mindset in terms of, right, I might be someone who goes, right, you got to get X amount of caps, this is my objective, whereas you're right, let's take it day by day. Actually, at the end of this, I've achieved like 100 caps, or I achieved 30, right, but I've taken it in my stride, and I've still had the place, and I've enjoyed that process because of the way that I thought about it. So rather than having an objective, and perhaps underachieving, say, I wanted 50 caps, only achieved 30, or actually I didn't set myself an objective, so I'm happier because I've never had that objective, and I'm more happier with what I've achieved rather than underachieving what I might have set myself. So I think it's that very important dynamic, that mindset which we go into. But you've been selected for this squad. Now, when you get selected for this squad, how does that go down? Is there a phone call saying, look, Tayla, we really want you to be part of this squad? Or is it an email like you've been selected? How does that sort of take place?
Well, I mean, we have camps every month. So obviously, the majority of it is done ourselves. So we've got to really put in our work on our own, and go to the gym, and go out on crutches, go on crutch runs, and this, that, the other. So it is all about putting in the work. because obviously if you don't put in the work, then you're not going to get anywhere. So yeah, it was all about doing that. And yeah, it was, I got an email to say that I was selected, which was really exciting. So yeah, 11 of us are going out. So we're really looking forward to it. On Saturday we leave, so it's very exciting times. But yeah, it was, it's an honor to play. Like I said, I never thought I would play football again, let alone play for my country. So it means a great deal to me. And my dad's coming out with me, so he's really excited as well.
Yeah, what a great time to explore Colombia between yourself and your dad in any downtime that you might have as well. But the fact that you're going out as a squad, and you know, when you look at the opportunity of playing in the World Cup and being in a different country, how different this time next week is going to be for you, and being around the squad, and looking back in terms of perhaps how the game has gone, and you know, your performance, and sort of those factors which come into it. But the fact that the importance is to enjoy it first and foremost, I think is the most important factor. But when you've been selected for the squad, which is really exciting. Now, you only said 11 players. Now, typically, how many aside are you playing in this World Cup?
7 aside.
7 aside, so effectively 4 subs. So not 11v11. I was like, well, that's a very bare squad without subs,
Yeah.
right? But 7v7. So are you on indoor pitches, outdoor pitches? How does that look?
So obviously the pitch is a lot smaller, and the goals are smaller. Then we have the 6 outfielder on crutches. The goalkeeper has both legs but one arm. And then if it hits the crutches, it's handball. So they're very strict on rules. And in Colombia, we're on grass, so we'll be outside in like proper stadiums. I mean, one of the stadiums that we're going to be in holds like 8,600 people. So it's, you know, it's going to be a big thing. So yeah, I'm getting more and more excited as the days go on.
I bet you are, and it just sounds exciting. The fact that you're going to be in front of crowds in stadiums, the fact that you get to, you know, go out there and you hear the sound of the fans around you, and you're feeling it for the first time. You're being in perhaps in the dressing room, and your kit is there, and putting on the kit. They're all very touching moments where when I break down processes, I'm like, oh, do you know what? Even just having the kit folded or hanging up in the changing room, and I go in for the first time and I see that. There's a level of excitement there for me. So for you to actually be in this very surreal moment is going to be very exciting this time next week for you. But who is your first match against in this World Cup?
Our first match is against Peru on the 5th of November.
And is this a typical World Cup format where you play like 3 games and then it goes through to like a knockout stage then? Or do you have more games? What's the format?
Yeah, so we're doing it as group stages. So there's 3 groups, 12 countries, and 34 games. So everyone will play 6 games in 7 days because they want to rank every country of where they're gonna be. So yeah, so the top 2 of all the groups will automatically go through, and then the 2 best third will go through to the quarters, and then it just goes down from there.
Sounds very exciting. The fact that you get to play a minimum of 6 games, right, is a great experience because, you know, when you see, you know, some of the professional teams and they go out, and I say professional teams in terms of England and, you know, men and women's, right, in what we've seen in World Cups, right,
Yeah.
and talking from that sort of perspective. Now, when they've gone out, when they've perhaps crashed out after 3 games and you see some players part of the squad, they haven't even been on once. Now, it's great experience that the fact they've been part of that squad, but they haven't picked up a single minute, whereas you're guaranteed 6 games to be part of that. I think is fantastic as a minimum experience to take away, but a very intense period whereby you're playing 6 games within 7 days. That is quite a heavy sort of period. So when you have that recovery and that downtime, and or looking at that mental and physical preparation between those games, have you already got a sort of plan which you're going to take in place with you, or how does that sort of look for the squad?
Yeah, I mean, we've all got, it's very up in the air at the moment because Colombia are being a bit funny about sorting stuff out. So it's still sorting stuff out. But our operations guys actually done like a full list of like what we wear, what we do, and like every day and stuff. But the coach has already said that our best thing's going to be using the pool for recovery and rehab after the games, because obviously it's very hot out there. It's like 33, 34 degrees. Yes, it's rainy season, but it's obviously because it's by the Caribbean, it's going to be like a short, sharp rainstorm and then it will be over. So yeah, it's going to be very, very tiring. I'm definitely going to feel like I'm going to die a little bit, because it's very tough to be on crutches. I mean, they've made the games time less, so it's going to be 20 minutes each way instead of 25. But yeah, it's going to be incredible. So yeah, it's all about we've got our strength and conditioning coach coming out with us as well. So I know they'll look after us and we'll go through the right things to be able to recover properly.
Sounds very exciting, and it's great to have that sort of operational aspect in place for you for when you go out and looking at how the routine looks, and looking at timetabling, knowing that there is going to be support in and around those matches, and just having perhaps that opportunity to speak to someone if you feel that mentally a game hasn't gone your way or it's been very tough. And especially when you talk about the heat in terms of that as well, the fact that it might be these very short sharp stints of weather coming in, there might be obviously different needs throughout the squad where the response to playing on the terrain might not agree with them, and perhaps feeling a sense of whereby a mental block in that, or perhaps they're not enjoying it, or there's lots of different elements for everyone across the squad in terms of whatever their disability is. They're all going to be supported in some way, which is the key factor within that. But the opportunity to be part of that squad is really incredible. But now you've talked about strength and conditioning, we talked about recovery, we've talked about looking at a timetable. Now, do you have like tactics and analysis? Do you watch the other teams, or is there anything like that when you're part of these squads?
Yeah, we have like a big team around us. We have like psychologists, we have analysis, we have tactical coaches, physios, strength and conditioning coach. We have like everyone around us, and it's a really big network, which is really nice. And like you say, we all feel supportive, and we know that we can go to them if we need help, or if we want more rehab or more strength work. So yeah, it's going to be good. And sorry, what was the question? I lost thought.
No, it's completely fine. It's just wondered about the tactical analysis and how the preparation of games look, etc.
Yeah, so we well, one thing that's the issue with, obviously this is the very first World Cup, so it's the only people that have played against each other is we've played against Poland, and Poland have played against us and the USA, and that's it. So in some degree, we have no idea how these other teams are going to play. So it's all about kind of on the day. I mean, obviously we could use our own knowledge and look on social media and everything. I mean, we all know that the African countries are going to be very good on crutches because they probably can't afford to have prosthetics. So we know that they're going to have the ability to keep running and everything. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be good at football. So it's just all about those ifs and buts, and like you say, the tactical and the analysis and everything. So I guess it makes it quite hard for a coach to be able to know what to do in that sense.
I was going to say, when you were talking there, you sounded very much like a manager there, thinking about the tactics and the response to the opposition players. But it is difficult, as you say there, for your coach, because you don't have that preparation. And I know as a coach myself, it is very difficult to sort of go into a situation, even like training, like, right, I've been asked to take this training session tonight. I don't know how many players got, I don't know how many balls, I don't know what equipment, I don't know what size of the pitch I have. And it's very difficult, a lot of these unanswered questions at times. And you actually take in your stride. But the fact is, you you want to be prepared. So being prepared for a World Cup in a, you know, competitive arena and environment is a very different strand as well, especially when that isn't available. But the fact that you're going into this for the first time is making history within itself. Being part of the first ever England squad, or being part of a squad of the first ever World Cup, is something which can never be taken away from you, and something which you can always have. Now, I think that's very exciting in itself, and obviously this is going to evolve over time, where, as you say, there might be a lack of analysis or information available because the teams haven't played before. However, the fact that it will grow over time, whereas, say, if you're selected in you know, 2 camps time in the future, this information might be very commonly available because the amount of games that have been played, for example. So I think your process that you talked about in terms of your mind of taking every day, day by day, and taking it as it comes, I think it's very important in this situation where it plays a benefit to you, because, as you said, there might be a mental block there, or there's a lack of information because of the lack of games, etc. Whereas you, by taking it day by day, you can overcome that sort of barrier effectively, where, all right, I don't have this information available, I actually feel that maybe a lack of confidence as a coach or player, etc., because I don't feel that I've had that mental preparedness to go into this. Whereas by taking it day by day and going, all right, actually that doesn't really affect me, I'm just going to take this in my stride, I'm going to enjoy the experience as we get out there, I think that actually is a benefit to you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one thing that I've kind of got used to over time with you know, with going through my pain and everything else. It's just, it's easier to be that way because well, it's less, or it's, you know, it's less on you, less on your brain, you know, you're not going to be thinking as much and this, that, the other. So it's just better to be that way. And yeah, you're not going to get those mental blocks or those issues in terms of, oh God, how am I going to be able to do this, or how am I going to be able to do that? So it's definitely come in handy when, you know, when we played against Poland, when we went over to Poland in September. It's just like, yes, we know this is the squad and this is how he wanted us to play, but it's like we don't know how they play. So it's, you know, it's just all about doing it in that moment and just giving it all you've got. And then just, yeah, it is all about just taking in the experience, having the best time, and just, yeah, going along with the process.
And so what position do you play within your squad?
I'm left wing, the hardest area.
And why do you say it's the hardest area then, from your perspective?
Because where I am, I'm gonna be going literally up and down. So I'm literally running or hopping up and down, because obviously I'm the only reason why I've gone for that position is because I knew I could get back and defend, but I'm not good enough to just defend. But I also know that I can attack in terms of getting the balls in and getting assists. So I know it's going to be a good position, but it's just a lot of hard work and a lot of running. But yeah, we played a couple matches against the boys on the 20th, and I got 2 assists. So I was very happy.
Take that, you know, it's a very good building block to have, getting those 2 assists, and especially against, you know, opposition of a different gender as well, because I think that's a test within itself, is coming against different genders. Just obviously, I think there's a mental aspect when it comes to that, because we know that it alters, and I've seen that from working with players over the years. But to be in that environment and to go, right, we played this game, I've come away with 2 assists, I've done this in perhaps what I define as the toughest position on the pitch, and, you know, having that experience is really going to take that into full effect. But when you go out to this camp, right, will you be awarded actual caps like the England teams?
Yeah, that was a question I asked my coach, because again, we us as England, we have a different badge than like normal England. So I'd always assumed that maybe we wouldn't. I don't know, but yeah, I've asked him, and he said that we will get caps for like international breaks. So in theory, I have 2 caps already. I don't physically have them, but I have 2 because I played twice against Poland when we went out there. So yeah, he said we will get the caps, which is so cool and really exciting, because it's just, I guess it emphasizes that you've played for England and you've represented your country somewhere else.
No, no, I'm completely with you. I just even little things like that, right, about caps and something which is, sort of a physical presence. And I know to everyone, the perhaps a materialistic item, but for me, I was like, right, if I was going to have a cap and I play for my national country, it would be there like on a shelf and I could see it. And yes, I play for them, and that is something which would be proud of me. But for you, when you say you've got those two caps already, and you don't have them effectively as material items, is that something that you will receive, or is that something that you won't receive? How does that look?
I would hope that we will receive them, but I'm not entirely sure if it will just be that they're just caps. But I know for certain that we will get the physical cap after the World Cup, so we will get them for the World Cup. So yeah, it's very exciting. And like you say, yes, it is a material thing, and yes, it's not the be all end all, but it's more about how you feel about seeing that, and that you've represented your country, and that it means a lot to you.
100%. I completely agree with you there because, even then looking at, generational as well, well beyond our very young ages, which we are here chatting right now. And I know every time I talk to my granddad that he talks about his grandfather, I believe, or his father, having a cap for Wales somewhere, and he believes that his brother's got it. Now, that's something that I've never seen when I'm 28 years of age on Friday, unfortunately. But within 28 years of living, I've never seen that cap. But I know it's in the family somewhere, and I hope it's in the family somewhere. But that's what I'm on about in terms of that generational, because even when you have kids and grandkids, if that's something that you select or happens, or even if you have nieces, nephews, or whatever, right, in your family, then that is something which, oh, wow, look, Tayla got this back in like 2024. And that actually has some historical context towards that, whereas you've got your place in history being part of that first ever squad of World Cup, and having something which represents a story, represents who you are. And it is a definition by default because of that experience which you've had. So for me, it is much more than just a materialistic item. It's actually a significant item which has an opportunity of being in a place here and now, but also a generational and future consideration within that. So I think that's very exciting. But even just to picture you chatting to your dad for the first time, and you've got this cap in your hands and he has it in his hands, and then mum is chatting about it with you, whether you get that on return, etc., how that looks. But just having that, I think, would be such a surreal and touching moment for them, and having that in their hands of what you've achieved, that is really significant.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my dad has already said that because obviously he's coming over. He said the very first time he's going to see me walk out and sing the national anthem, he's going to be bawling, and that means a lot to me. But it's very touching as well, because I know he's very, very proud of me, and that's all I've ever wanted, is for my parents to be proud. And I guess it's all about them seeing how far I've come, and how far and what I've achieved in this short space of time. And yeah, it will be amazing to have that conversation as well when I physically have it, and them seeing it. And I mean, my mum can't come because obviously she's got work and looking after my dog, but she's actually making a scrapbook of like my whole journey. So again, it's like that memorabilia kind of thing. So yeah, it's very heartwarming and very emotional to think about that. And yeah, I know they're very, very proud of me.
Even when you say it there, that is very touching to me. And I know I'm not related to you, right? And this is the first time we met. But when you have those open moments, that is a very touching moment. And I think just for her to be sitting there, on the back table, and to be making that scrapbook, and to be looking at those moments, and to have that in the future. And again, even if you have kids or grandkids and so on, I think that is a very significant sort of moment, and something which will have a place within your heart and mentally for you. And I think that's incredible, because we talked about some very harrowing and very tough, adverse times, but this is a very exciting time, and that very narrative between the last 10 years in terms of what you've been through to where you are now, I think despite hitting a very bottom area and significant time where you had that low and gone through everything you have, I think it's come back up now, and you're at a very exciting peak in terms of what you've got ahead of you. So it's incredible to hear these moments that you share with your family, in terms of the conversations which you did have, in terms of the conversations you're now having, and the difference between them is actually incredible.
Yeah, they couldn't be any different. So yeah, it's just like I always say, I'm the happiest I've ever been, and like I do generally believe that it did happen for a reason, because I am a better person. I wouldn't be doing what I would be doing now because I wanted to be a police officer. So yeah, I'd still be helping people and supporting people, but like I went for my other love. So and I feel like my love for football's grown even more. And like, yeah, to be able to coach is going to be amazing. Like, I've worked with disability football, and I've worked with like the college girls that I'm doing now. So eventually, once I've finished uni, so I'm in my second year now, hopefully doing my well, I will be doing my C license this year, and hopefully doing B next year. I want to be able to move abroad and coach out there, because I feel like there's a calling for me, being a woman and disabled. I feel like it's going to go in my favor in that way. And obviously it's still becoming a big thing in, like, say, America. Like, football is still growing out there. So yeah, that's my goal.
I was going to ask what your long-term ambition in coaching was, but it sounds very exciting in terms of what you want to do. And I think I completely agree with you within that respect of the future, which is ahead of you, especially, abroad in terms of the opportunities. But, you've got some goals in front of you in terms of your C license, then your B license, you're finishing uni, and then getting to America. So it gives you a sort of staged approach towards how it's going to look in terms of the future, but building that experience across it in terms of what you do with the academy teams now, and having the opportunity to gaining that experience and working with the disability groups that you have, and building that far and beyond. But we often talk about player care, right, in terms of when players get released from academies, in terms of when players get released from clubs, and some of the moments which they go through, from the mental and physical demands of when they're playing. Now, do you have those levels of player care for the disabled squads, and do you have like support networks in place for players within these categories?
Yeah, we have obviously a player welfare officer that's there to help and support, and we're all kind of got some degree of like, we all are there to care and support them, and obviously some coaches know more about the conditions that they have than others. So it's been really nice to work with different disabilities, because you get to know so many different people. And I always am the only woman, which doesn't bother me because I work well with men anyway. But it's always nice to have that woman there as well, because obviously some people don't like talking to the men coaches, for example, so they'll come to me, and it's just nice to have that that support and that guidance there for them.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and I think it's about changing that narrative. And even when I reflect upon when you're chatting there, when I've worked in that academy environment, we've perhaps had 2 or 3 women who've worked with us at the peak time, and that is a very low percentage compared to the amount of males in the academy. So the fact that you're there, again, has that impact in terms of when those young girls perhaps come into the academy or group training sessions, that they see a female coaching, and they can connect with you and perhaps share stories with you. But it also means that they're looking at someone and going, perhaps I can do that in the future, or it is very natural for women to be in the game. So you are also changing a wider narrative as football evolves from the academy levels as well, in terms of those environments and opportunities for women. But when you sort of look at the opportunities now, where you talk about being selected for the England squad, we talk about coaching, we talk about the diversity within that. Now, is there, if someone said to you, right, Tayla, we're going to start up an amputee squad, disability squad, we're going to be playing regular league games, say twice a month, right, in our local region or geographical area, and it might be up to an hour's travel, would that appeal to you, or would you be like, do you know what, that is just a little bit too much to add into my lifestyle on top of everything going on?
No, it'd 100% appeal. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that I would be passionate about, and would want to help, because it's all about breaking down those barriers. And like, in the country, there is only 3 teams that have just amputee football. which is not a lot, and they're all spread out. So you've got Chelsea, Portsmouth, and Everton. And I mean, Everton's the closest to me, but it's not close. It's like 2 hours. But yeah, it's just it would be nice for other clubs, countries to have all different disabilities. Whereas, say, Wolves, for example, they have pan disability, which is, yeah, it's amazing, it's great that all disabilities can play together, but sometimes it's better to have just specific disabilities as well, because then it's just purely for that. So yeah, I would feel strongly about doing that, and would definitely be interested in doing that. I mean, for me to go to training, it's an hour, but obviously we're all spread out. I mean, some people drive 6 hours to get to training. So I guess it's just how much you are willing to put in, and how much you want to get out of it, and how much it means to you to do what you want to do.
I completely agree with you. And even when you're chatting now, I'm thinking about all the individuals out there who are interested in football, perhaps have never played or want to experience it for the first time, or have experienced it and want to play more regularly. How many are perhaps sitting at their homes, or they're in work and etc. And they're always thinking about this opportunity, but it never really elaborates anywhere, but they wish they had it. So there's so many players which could be out there right now, but no one really knows how many are actually available. And therefore you could actually have a real formatted, say, like league, even if it's not, a competitive league and it's a friendly sort of league for the next few years, right? There is probably enough players out there to generate enough teams to play within a local region where people aren't traveling 2-3 hours to a game, up to 6 hours, etc. So even if you said, right, let's get all the foundations in England to come together, and they had the disability teams themselves, right? That's the first way of getting, the stability and structure in place, where if you look at every professional club that has a foundation, how many disability squads would you have? Well, actually, then how many leagues could then format under that in terms of the local regions, in terms of the local FAs, etc. So I think there's a piece of work which you could present there to the Wolverhampton Foundation. Just put it together, present it, and you could be changing the landscape just as you start there. So I think there's definitely a project there which you could advocate and become a project coordinator on. So don't be afraid to present that, because I think there are so many people out there who are perhaps not taking part in the sports for those reasons. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to chat to you, because if I share this and people are hearing your story and going, oh wow, look at Tayla, she's playing for England, or look at what she's been through, and look at what she's doing now, and look at the opportunities in front of her, or even if they're sitting in the same space going, why isn't this actually happening? Could I reach out to her, or could I reach out to someone, and can we build a network? Then that's the whole point. I want to inform others through this discussion of the incredible opportunities which are out there, but also whilst highlighting the story and journey which you've gone through in terms of the excitement in terms ahead of you. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, and this is one of the first conversations around this, which is hopefully others listen to and go, well, we've actually been discussing this, but we haven't actually pushed it further. I think there's a lot of scope for a lot of work in the future for this.
100%. I totally agree. I mean, it is especially amputee football, it's just not well known enough, and it's not broadcasted enough. So like you say, not many people know about it. And obviously that's why we are doing what we're doing. That's why we've been on the TV. I mean, we was on BBC Breakfast on Monday, and like we just want to get it out there that this is what we're doing and this is what we're creating, and we are a family, but we also want to bring more people together, and other people should play, and it is just all about creating that safe space for people that want to play football but just feel like that they can't. So yeah, it is all about that. And so many, like you say, so many clubs could, there could be so many leagues if all the clubs came together and did something about it, but it's just not well known enough, and people just don't do enough to be able to make it happen.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. And even when I've had other individuals on the podcast who have perhaps been chairpersons of a local football club within the local regions of England, they've talked about the lack of opportunities for squads which they've set up with disability and how far they have to travel. So I understand the different perspective from a player yourself, and B, from an official representative of a club, where a lot of these issues are being discussed in two different capacities, but there doesn't seem to be a connection between the both. And then therefore, as an outsider myself, I'm asking why. And that is where that mindset of, well, why aren't we doing this, or why can't we do this, or that continuous of like, well, let's push the boundaries and let's defy them and let's go and change the narrative around these things. I think that's where that advocacy comes in my mindset of where I've been involved in backgrounds of sports for so long. That's where, when you were chatting, I'm like, oh my god, there's so many different projects there, there's so much exciting, because that's where my sort of background and experiences come from. But now we take you down into a coaching route, and we talk about your work with the squads, right? So you wanted to be a police officer when you were younger, but you're a coach now. Now, I had that sort of very oddly, strangely enough, a mindset where I wanted to be a police officer when I was younger. Then I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I ended up in sport, right? And now I do teaching in sport, and I do podcasting, and I don't ever think about even going into law. So now you're in this mindset of being in football, and you talk about plans about going out to America. Does even the fact of changing a career, i.e. into being a police officer, into law, ever cross your mind in any space? Or are you like, no, football is first and foremost. I'll see what happens in 10 years and that's what's going to happen? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think about being a police officer anymore. Like you say, my top goal is that I want to become the first female amputee coach. Like, there's no one out there that's female and an amputee, so I want to be the first, and that is my goal, to be the first. And I know I will achieve it one way or another. So yeah, football is my number one thing, and I will keep going until I get it.
Please absolutely continue with that mindset, because I absolutely am behind you, and I'm behind anyone who has that mindset, because when they talk about, I want to do this and I will be that person to do it, I think for me, when I hear these conversations, I have them on the podcast, right, is that people are cut from a very different cloth when they have that mindset, in terms of they want to break out, they want to be different. And I think that's what spurs people to go on and be successful, in terms of being an inspiration, to change a narrative, to support others, or going on to achieve their own goals and perhaps beyond their own goals. So I think that mindset will take you far and beyond in coaching, and really will have that impact, especially if you talk about spaces in the US, and the fact that their game is still evolving very much at a grassroots level, and then even at the sort of paid football collegiate levels. The fact that they might not even consider disability football, and the fact that they might not consider player aftercare to the levels that we started to branch out here in the UK. And even here in the UK, we're still not at the levels that we should be attaining in terms of these spaces. So I think there's a very exciting future when you're out there in terms of doing that. But I know you've talked about impacting others. You talked about working and caring with others, right? So when you're in that coaching environment, and perhaps you'll say with the under 14s right now, you've got them for, say, 3 times they're an hour each over 1 week, and that over a month you're looking at working with them about 12 times, right? So in your mind, when you're working with each of these players during each session, is your mind about developing them? We should be developing across all 4 of the areas, right, of the 4 pillars. But I feel that every coach has their own sort of philosophy and identity, whereby they lean towards one pillar the most, and then they have their other pillars which fall behind. Now, out of the 4 pillars, which is the one which comes to you the most?
What are the 4 pillars?
No, I'm completely so the 4 pillars, right? No, that's fine. It's completely fine. So the 4 pillars. Number 1 is physical. So looking at the physical side of players, and their capabilities and all those considerations. So 1v1s, 2v2s, their general fitness and all those, right? Second of all, we got mental. So their mental preparation in terms of how they understand the game, their tactical philosophy, understanding where they should be. So that's the psychosocial sort of element, how they get that social side in there as well. Third off, then we got tactics and how we look at the game tactically. And then the fourth one is technical. So we look at the different technical abilities of player all around. Now, for me, if you said out of 4 pillars, I'm very much focused on the psychosocial, and then very much comes the technical, followed by the tactical, and then mental. So the first two is psychosocial and technical. So they're the first 2 pillars that I would really focus on. Now, naturally to you, reflecting upon your practice, do you very much work with players all about, right, this is our tactical framework, or is it very much, this is what we have to achieve psychologically in this, or is this very much, right, we have to be very physical in this session, or is this very much, right, we're going to play like a 4-4-2, these are the tactics that I want to play? What is your sort of pillar?
So that's like the 5 corners, isn't it?
Yeah, so the 4 or 5 corner approach.
Yeah, that was probably why I was a bit confused. I'd never heard 4 pillars. That was why.
That's no problem.
I'd probably go more towards the tactical side. So how I approach it and how they're going to achieve it, and go from there. And I mean, but it's also about just participating in getting them to play football and, having the basics first and then expanding on that.
So very much participant heavy, getting the basics of football and then developing tactically. And then I think, no matter how you identify either of your corners or pillars, right, naturally the others are going to fall in place under those. So you might go very tactically, but I'm like, right, there's a very big psychosocial element towards that, because they have to understand where their pitch geography is. They have to understand how they play. They have to understand formations, how they transfer, transitions in and out of the game. And then they also have to be very physical within that. And then they have to be, very technical to be able to do some of these things. Whereas I might focus on the psychosocial. Actually, psychosocial has to be underpinned by all the other 3 elements. So no matter which way you approach it, you might be very heavy towards, say, a 60%, and then you might have 20-20-20, right? 20-10-10. Then you're going to be very focused on one. But I think it's very interesting in terms of the way you say that you might set your team up tactically. I might go, right, my team might not be very tactical because we just don't have the players to play that. So therefore, how could the psychological input of my players affect Tayla's team? Now, I want to get around her team by using the psychosocial of my players rather than their technical ability, because they're lacking. So Tayla's players might be better technically, but I'm going to try and beat her on the mental game. And that is how we're going to win that game. So that is where the fun of coaching comes from. And now when you're on that side and you're coaching, is that the side that spurs you on in terms of being there with your tactics and being there against the other coaches, or is it very much a firm fundamental belief about developing the players regardless?
I think it's a bit of both, really, because I'm very competitive, so I'm there. I want to beat them. I want to achieve more and this, that, the other. But again, it is also about just the kids being able to play, getting out there, and them enjoying what they're doing, and them achieving what they want to achieve. And what you were saying, it kind of comes down to what we're going to be going through at the World Cup, and like how we may be better tactically, but someone like the African countries, they're going to be better at fitness, so to speak, because they're on their crutches all the time. So I guess it is how the coach gets around those things, and how they can implement it to how we win. So yeah, it's fun being a coach and having to think of all these things, and just going through that journey is really good. I mean, I'm learning so much being with the college girls, and learning so much from them. So it's really helping. And because I'm like the type of person that if someone just says, oh, just do a session, I'm like, I go really, really blank. So I just don't have any ideas. Whereas at the moment, with what I've been doing with the college girls and with their coach, I've been writing down like what he's been doing, because obviously it's all about stealing people's other ideas, and how you can change it or implement it into what you are doing.
Absolutely, and I think that's definitely the one thing is about looking at what others are doing and then changing it to what your way is around it. And again, that's where I come back to that assessment piece, whereby you're marked on a criteria of the expectation, but actually you've delivered it your way. And then sometimes when you get feedback of, well, actually you could have done it this way. Well, I might have already assessed that in my own mind that I could have done it that way, but I chose not to because in my thought process I wanted to do it this way, and therefore you might be graded down on that because it hasn't met the criteria. Whereas you've actually thought about it in a different way. As a marker, I'd be actually increasing that mark. So I'm like, actually, you're doing something outside the box, which is even more fantastic to hear rather than us tick boxing you there. But I think that balance between, that player development and understanding the way that they need and want to do it in terms of being very competitive yourself, I think gives them a very natural ability to understand that there is competitive nature when there is playing football, playing sports, and understanding that you have to compete, understanding that there is a lesson in learning and losing, winning and losing, and how you understand that, how you take that away, how you develop that resilience. But as that balance between you and your team and getting what they want and need out of it, I think creates a very important dynamic, which a lot of coaches forget about because they want they want their teams to be very competitive. And even when they talk about their own personality and being competitive themselves, it actually then becomes about what they want to achieve as a coach rather than what the team needs to identify and achieve objectively as a collective, which I think is the important thing. So I think that balanced approach is very important. And I think the way that you have that right now and the way that you're learning from others is only going to benefit you in the future rather than being 100% fully competitive or having a 90% competitive whilst having a 10% learning element in that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, like you say, some coaches can be, it's all about them and they don't really care about what the team does. And obviously, that's not how you should be. As a coach, you would want, yes, as a coach, you want to win, but you also want your players to enjoy themselves and them to have fun and them to understand what winning and losing is and how you can adapt it and how you can change it and help them.
100%, and I think that's the important thing is about helping the players and understanding what they need and about taking that away, which I think is all about helping them. Because again, where you might be on your journey, you're on your own journey as a player yourself, so it's about how can your coaches help you within that dynamic. And even after that World Cup, you might feel a level of frustration under your excitement somewhere that you just feel that you need to talk to your coach about, and therefore you're being supported and then developing that as your session progress, or whether you have one-to-one contacts or your player support network, etc. There is a level of learning which takes place within that outside of that level of competitiveness where you're being supported as a player and you're in that situation as a player where you're then flipping from player to coach, coach to player, where both of these dynamics are in a sort of vertical essence where every time you're putting on one hat and taking the other one off, there is a benefit to you all round on the bigger picture, which is really going to benefit you as a player, but also benefit the players which you're coaching at the same time.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. I mean, I guess in a way it's helping me with coaching and playing because, like you say, you're going to get some aspects that will help, and you understand stuff that the coach is telling you as a player, but then you also can sympathize what they're trying to say to you as a player, as a coach.
Absolutely,
So
100%.
yeah, it all helps in in the long run.
Absolutely. Now, when you are coaching, right, what is perhaps one of the biggest frustrations which you feel or see when you're coaching?
I guess ever since I've been with the girls, they're one thing I always find is girls listen a lot better than boys, so they're very like on it. They know, like, if you tell them a specific like drill or technique, they'll do it straight away. So I guess some with girls, it's they can be very like against each other in some way, like, so they're very kind of bitchy between them because I'm the best, no, you're the best, like, kind of thing. So but I guess you always get that because everyone wants to be the best they can be, and then it all works out in the end. But some with some of the college girls, you get some that will really put 100% effort in, and then you've got some that are aren't really that bothered. So it's kind of finding a balance between that, because like some girls are playing like for semi-pros, and then you've got some that never play but they're on this like degree, and it's like trying to balance out and find the middle ground between them both, because obviously you've got some that are better than others.
Yep. And I think that's where the dynamic comes from is, how do you bring a group together that has a very varied experience, very varied, technical and mental ability in terms of how you bring them together as a squad. I think that's where the key element of coaching and management comes from. So I think once you start to unlock and look at those areas and start to develop them, I think that's what really develops us as coaches, and it develops us in terms of our people management skills as well, and really taking that away within our lives. But it also means from a player perspective of how you understand the players around you, and then when you're in that environment as a coach, you're understanding the players and what they're going through whilst they're sat in front of you as well. So I think it creates a real good dynamic and a good balance in terms of how you can take away your both playing and coaching careers. Now, Tayla, before we move into the quick fire questions round, I just wanted to talk about the Richard Whitehead Foundation, because I know it plays a significant role in terms of how it's got you to where you are today and opening up doors and having those connections. And you applied and was awarded one of the 4 beneficiaries who was gifted the, please correct me if I pronounce this word wrong, right? OSA running blade, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's like you say, I wouldn't be where I am without them. It was an off chance that I applied. Like I was like, I won't get it, but I'll give it a try. You never know. So yeah, it explained that when you're over the age of 18, you're not funded for running prosthetics, and obviously I wanted to get back into running, and that would help my football and this, that, the other. So yeah, I was very lucky to be one of the 4 beneficiaries, and it's completely changed my life in that sense, because I'm great friends with Richard, and he's always there to help and support me. And then obviously then I got to know more amputees, so then that helped be surrounded by people that know you and are there for you, and they're different to people that aren't amputees. And then yeah, it's been, they helped me actually get on to or get into the Wolves Foundation, and obviously then that's how I found out about the degree, and yeah, it just went on from there. But they've been incredible, and I'm always there to help and support them in any way. I mean, I've mentored some kids that are amputees, and how I've helped them through their journey, and getting back into sport, and how it feels to be an amputee, and how to get over certain things, and what it's like. One of the things was they didn't like looking at their scar, and it's like, I get that, but it's also about without that you wouldn't be where you are today. So it's about looking at it as a positive, and like that that means a lot, because without that scar you wouldn't be here. Like the girl that I was mentoring, she had cancer, so without her having her leg off and without her having that scar, she wouldn't be here, because she would still be suffering and still be in pain. So it's all about looking at the positives in everything, and how we're able to get back into sports even though we are disabled. That doesn't matter. It's all about enabling them and supporting them and getting them and breaking down those barriers. That's why I feel so strongly about it.
I think there's a lot of key messages within there, and I'm just noting the 2 down now, which you said. But as I listen back to that, I know there will be 4 or 5 different messages within that, because as you started talking, it's like, right, there's one, and then you kept talking, it's like, there's another. So I've made a timestamp of that, because I think there is many in there I just want to unpack and just to put down, because I think one of the things that you said is when you applied for it, you didn't feel that you were going to get it, but you applied for it anyway, because why not? And you had that chance, and look at what you had the outcomes of doing. And even when you talk about going on and mentoring, doing, that work is now furthered in terms of what you're giving back to those. And you touched upon that at the start, or you know, elaborated about that at the start about giving back to others, i.e. your parents, right? And even that, you know, that foundation has been a benefit to you, and you know, it's opened up doors in terms of coaching. And even if you go off to America, perhaps America would not have happened whether you've had this opportunity, because it might give you confidence and just open the door to get in Wolves. Wolves got you into uni and college, and then this, you know, opened up doors then to go into America. So I think where those intrinsic things, which I was going to say earlier on, is as you touched upon it, you know, it's one of those things which you know, happen for a reason. I completely agree with that, because you know, as I said there, America might not happen unless you have the opportunity to go and be part of this foundation, right? And it's even when you're born, right? And when you're born, right, you're in your mum and dad's arms, and they're looking at you, and at no point are they thinking, right, as this newborn baby, are you going to be playing for an amputee squad in your 20s, right? But you're here and you're playing in your 20s, and you said about it happening for a reason. And we looked upon that journey, and part of your life is now that you are part of the squad and you're being awarded caps as a result of a disability. Well, actually, you're being awarded caps because of your resilience, your commitment, your drive and determination to overcome some of the most difficult moments anyone could ever experience. And your disability is part of your story. So that is the narrative behind that. Whereas they never looked at you as a newborn and being part of an amputee squad, but here you are in your 20s being part of that, and you never planned for that as a young age. They never looked at you and thought that, but it is one of those things that's happening. And rather than looking at it as one of those difficult moments where, you know, life could have ended, or, you know, you could be, you know, pushing yourself around in a wheelchair and, you know, effectively, you know, get a desk job and be very settled in life and all these things, you're going off and doing, you know, something where when you were hesitant about perhaps the disease returning, you went and done it anyway. You're traveling out to Colombia and being part of this squad. You're being part of very different dynamic social groups. You're in a competitive environment. You're playing in a very tough position on the pitch, which isn't easy to do, right? And then having a disability on top of that is even more difficult to do, especially when you're getting up, you're getting down, you're working part of the squad, you're being in that competitive environment. And a lot of people would ask those questions of why would you do these things to yourself? But I think it's that mindset, as you've unlocked right throughout from the start, I think is what takes you to go above and beyond. And even when you said, I will be the first person to do that, I think that is what is key here, is your mindset right throughout this has been what has taken you from those moments into where you are now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's because of how positive I was and how I wanted to live my life. I want to get married. I want to have kids. And, you know, it was that mindset that got me through everything. And it was just, you know, the first thing I said when I woke up after my amputation was, is it gone? Because, you know, I couldn't wait to have that surgery because that was what was, you know, causing everything. So once that was gone, the doctor was like, I've done my bit, now it's on you. And it's like, yeah, I know it's on me, and I will do this and I will do that. And, you know, that's just, I've just gained so much more confidence, resilience, determination. And I feel like I'm so much more stronger and more determined to do anything and everything now, because I know I can do it, and I know I will do it.
I'm completely behind you, and I will be behind you for this World Cup and beyond that. And I can't wait to see how this story unfolds, and to see how this experience opens up even more for you, and to see you grow as a person as well. I think it's going to be fantastic to see, and I can't wait to see these growth elements in you. Now, we've very much shared about your story. We've very much talked about a lot of these moments, and I think there's very important concepts within that. But before we move on to the quick fire question round, right? You talked about, you know, perhaps a lack of awareness and a lack of understanding, and hence why you've done the interview on Monday, hence why you've been on here, hence why you're still sharing a message. But is there anything else in particular like that you would like to share, or maybe a key message, or maybe just something which is, you know, a part of your mindset or part of your personality, or anything around this sort of topic that you want to share with others to get this story out there further?
All I would say is never give up, always trust yourself, and it doesn't matter what you're going through, you will get through it, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. And you know, you could end up becoming and doing wherever you see fit, and you know, your world's your oyster. Just keep going, and believe in yourself, and never give up.
What a great message to sort of summarize, but also to take away. And I think they're very important words to really take away, especially on some of the other quotes, which I've made note of right throughout. And I think when I piece that together, I think it's going to create a very nice sort of collective in terms of a story and a narrative, which can really continue to hopefully engage others and hopefully inspire them. Even though you don't like that word, it's come natural to me every time, right? To really be part of this bigger picture of spreading that word, to be part of a collective, to be out there, even if you're yourself listening and you have that disability, right? That there is something out there for you, and there is groups and there are people, and it is a difficult experience for yourselves to go through, but there is something out there and there is something bigger pushing yourself to be here. Now, Tayla, we're going to go into the quick fire question round, right, which always finishes up the podcast very nicely after such a great conversation with yourself. Now, there's nothing to catch you off, there's nothing to try and catch you out, right? It's hopefully just talking about yourself a little bit more, and just finishing up on a nice quick fire question round, if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Fab. I'm looking forward to it. So we might have answered number one, but you might have a different perspective in terms of player one, right? But you can answer this with a question that you might have already given me at the start. That's okay, right? So quick fire question round. Who was or is your role model?
Jack Wilshere.
Oh, Jack Wilshere. Can I ask why?
Yeah, I mean, well, and Richard as well. I mean, I'll say Richard first, but it's really strange because I was watching the Paralympics and the Olympics in 2012, and I just like so inspired about how incredible that all those people were and how much they have to do more than like Olympians. And at that point, I wasn't even an amputee, so to actually be an amputee and be really good friends with him now is like incredible, and like he does inspire me every day with all the marathons he does and what he achieves and everything he does to break down barriers within sport and disability. And Jack Wilshere, because I don't know, I've just always had a thing for him. I thought he was incredible at Arsenal, and he was just so unlucky with how his ankles were, and I think he would have been such an incredible or even more incredible player. I mean, I've got his number. I'm number 10 in England, and to see him as a coach now is inspiring, and to become like where he is would be so good. And I would love to pick his brains about coaching and how he's found it and what he does. But now he's a first team coach at Norwich. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, I think he's a great person, and I've met him a couple of times, but that was before my amputation. So I'd love to see him again to see if he recognizes me and just tell him my story and like everything I've been through.
I think that's very touching. I think, it's a shame that he has gone to Norwich, but you never know how his career might unfold there. And I was always one where, although I'm a Chelsea fan, I always liked Jack Wilshere because I thought he had a lot to offer. And I hate seeing players end their careers early because of injury, because it's such a shame because of the potential that they had and what he could still potentially be part of that England squad if he was still, performing consistently and didn't have those injuries, right? But, you've got his number, reach out to him, give him a little ring later, say, oh, listen, I want to share my story with you, but I also want to talk about coaching. Do you reckon I could have an away day down at Norwich one day so you coach? You never know what might happen if you play your hand right, Tayla.
Yeah, it's very true.
Just
it's
try
not
it.
what you know, it's who you know, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's what you said earlier. If you don't try, you don't know. Why not? Live by your own admissions. Now, as a player yourself, right, do you have any superstitions?
No, I don't think I do. I mean, my dad got me a new boot and it's got my number on it. And that was the boot that I got my 2 assists from. So I'm thinking that it might be a lucky boot. But apart from that, I don't really have any. I mean, I do the same thing all the time. Like obviously, with the kit, I know some like I'd probably no. I guess I would always put my sock on first, more than my kit. But apart from that, I don't really have anything. No, I just go with the flow. Really, I just do what's there and what's needed.
Well, time will only tell if you wear this boot again, right, and how many assists you get over the next few games. So that'll be an interesting sort of analysis which you can do yourself and see how many assists you can get, which I hope is quite significant in the amount that you do have. Now you talked about this, right? But it might be again a different answer. If you could go and play for any club in the world, where would it be?
Ooh, I'd love to play for Arsenal, I've got to say. I mean, I'd love to coach there as well. That would be incredible. I mean, I'm inspired by what Arteta's done for the club. I mean, I remember him being a player, and I was a ball girl at Arsenal in 2013 and 14, and like he was a player, and I met him, and this, that, the other. For him to be now the first team coach and what he's done for that club is incredible. And I think he really does fit in perfectly. And I think because he is young and like he's more of a friend than a coach, I think that's what works with the players, and how he's just so humble but so what's the word? He's so like, yeah, he's just so supportive, and like the way he reacts when we score a goal and this, that, the other. I just love that. Like, love his enthusiasm. So yeah, I think he's amazing.
I love that. I love that. You know, you could reach out to him as well. But I think Jack Wilshere first. If you could move to any country now, I know you said the US, but if you could move to any country, and again, it might be the same answer, where would it be?
Definitely America. I mean, I definitely think they're leaps and bounds above us in terms of disability. I mean, the way they were when I was out there is just, they're just so advanced over there. So they would be really, I'd benefit being over there. And like I was saying, being a woman and being disabled, and with football still arising, I think it will be really beneficial for me. Where I'm not really sure, not the colder state, but more like I literally have a map above me because I've traveled around America. So I've been to, I think, 12 states now. So I'd love to go to every state.
Wow, that's incredible. So, what have you done to go to those 12 states? Were they holidays, or were they Camp Americas, or is it a mixture? Or
Well, the very first time I went was to Florida, you know, the usual, like going to the parks and everything when I was 11. And then all the rest have been in 2022. I went over and was a sports counselor in New Hampshire. And then I went traveling for 30 days afterwards, where I went from New York to San Francisco. So I went to loads of different states, and it was incredible. I loved every second of it.
it sounds incredible. My best mate lives in America, and he's just back here. We're catching up tomorrow in a close city to us. And he lived in Florida for a few years, but he lives in California now. So I'm looking forward to catching up with him because I haven't seen him in well, I think good 6-7 years.
Oh,
But yeah, I'm
nice.
looking forward to chatting to him about how life is in America, and having that sort of conversation with him tomorrow. So this American sort of feel is very exciting. So it'd be great to have you on the podcast again, and hopefully I can have one of my American contacts come on at the same time, and we could have a great conversation around life in America and life in the UK, right? And coaching, and really bring that together. So I can make that happen if you're interested.
Yeah, that would be really good. I mean, the only thing that I have issues at the moment with is obviously I rely on the NHS with obviously
Mm.
my prosthetics. So I've still got to look into that because obviously medical insurance is different over there and everything. But I do my mum's friend lives in America, so a way of getting out there is obviously a sponsor, and I think he would be happy to sponsor me. So I'm not giving up with it. I've just got to look into it further with the medical side, because it could be that it's cheaper to actually fly home to go to use the NHS than actually use it out there. So it's just about weighing it up and looking more into it.
Well, I think you've got lots of time to, look at all those little intricacies,
Yeah.
Especially between studying your licenses and finishing up uni. So, there is that time frame. So, there's definitely opportunity to, really cross the I's and dot the T's and get that research done. So, I think it's going to be incredible if you get out to America. Now, you've talked about Arteta, you've talked about Jack Wilshere, but if you could play alongside any player, who would it be?
Oh, I think male-wise, if I'm going for this generation, I would say Odegaard. I think he is incredible with how he does. I mean, you can tell that Arsenal are missing him incredibly. But I think female-wise, I'd probably go for... It's weird because I don't really watch a lot of female, because I think I grew up obviously watching the men. I'm just used to watching the men. But there's a lot of women out there like Alex Scott. I mean, she was incredible. Rachel Yankee. They would be really good players to play against, or play with, should I say.
Good choices, definitely good choices for sure. What's your favorite food?
Ooh, you can tell that I'm an Arsenal fan, can't you? Favorite food, probably. I'm very plain because I'm a very fussy eater, so I'd probably just say chicken. Chicken's my favorite.
Nothing wrong with that. That's why sometimes I don't eat at other people's houses, because I'm too apprehensive about what they might eat. And I remember, when I was a young kid, I went over to my best mate's house, right? And they made bangers of mash and peas, and there was only a small amount of peas, but I literally just ate the peas. And about 20 minutes later, they had finished all theirs, and they were like, "You've only ate the peas." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't like any of this." So from there, I don't tend to eat at other people's houses unless we concretely agree in terms of what is being made or whether we're getting food from somewhere, right? What's your favorite film?
I quite like I'm very I like all like the romancy films. So I'd probably say Fault in Our Stars was a very good but very emotional film. But I've seen have you seen the homeless World Cup documentary on Netflix?
I haven't, no.
No, it's very, very interesting and very eye-opening as well, and how that came about, and how we did, and how inspiring it is.
I'll have to watch that for sure. I remember when I used to coach a few years ago, at the one club that I coached at, our facilities, we had the Wales homeless World Cup squad training at our facility. So I knew a few of the players back then. So that was pretty eye-opening. And when I had conversations with them before we started our training and we were setting up, etc., and they were finishing, they would, be very insightful conversations. So I definitely have to check that out on Netflix, because I think that is, you look at the different sort of demographics. You look at the men's, senior team, you look at the women's senior team, you look at the disability teams, you look at, the amputee teams, you look at the homeless teams. There are so many different segments that all play a part in terms of, their own sort of narrative, their own stories, and they're all playing for their country or playing football somewhere, but they're all connected through football, because each of their stories are different, which is incredible.
100%. And then another good film is Goal, and there's like Goal 2 and Goal 3. They were really
Goal
good.
3's not so good.
No, it was like they run out of ideas, but yeah, they're good films. I quite like the films that are like are real life kind of films, and they mean a lot to watch, and yeah.
I get you entirely. So what's your favorite TV series?
The Vampire Diaries.
Good choices. I've never watched the Vampire Diaries, but I remember, if anyone stands out, it's Nina Dobrev for whatever reason, right? Whether that's because she was one of the main characters in that. That's the only reason I know of the Vampire Diaries of any way.
Yeah, it's very good. But I was like hooked. I was watching so many per day because it was so good. But yeah, it's a good fit. It's a good series.
What is your top tip for any coach?
Oh, I would say always learn from others, because obviously that's where you're going to get your experience and your help and your knowledge to be able to become a good coach, because that's what I've done with working with Louis at the college, and he's been helping us, and I've been taking his ideas, and then I can use them in the future.
I love that. I think that's such a great top tip as well. Do you have any non-negotiables in your life or as a coach?
We have some non-negotiables in our team. So like obviously we have like respect. What else? We have being on time, supporting one another, and like, all kind of the basics that you would expect, but not everyone does it, but yeah, the all the nice ones, and helping and supporting, and yeah, all those kind of ones.
Who is your favorite music artist?
Shawn Mendes.
Good choice. Good choice. You can
I
definitely tell.
actually have his quote on my arm, because his song "In My Blood," I could relate to every word in his song. So yeah, when I actually saw him live, I bawled my eyes out the whole time.
Well, at least it's very relatable, and at least it's all connected. But I think that's pretty cool to have his quote. I have seen the picture of your arm on an article that I read, and one of the pictures of you, and I did wonder what relation that was. So it's nice to have that sort of question answered. And you can definitely tell that you like the romantic films then, because Shawn Mendes is a romantic within the way that he comes across, in the way that his songs are delivered and stuff, and just who he is naturally, just in that suave that he has, right? But the final question I have for you, Tayla, right, is what does reflection mean to you?
Well, I mean, it can mean so many different things. I mean, you can self-reflect, you can reflect on others. So I guess it depends on the circumstance, but it is all about reviewing what you've done, and how you can make it better and achieve with getting better. And it's all about like the plan, do, and review. And yeah, I mean, it's one thing that I've having to do with uni, and reflect and everything. It's one of those things that I'd never done before. So it's it's all about learning the process of doing it and how it helps, what you do in the future.
100%, 100%. And what a great way to finish up a wonderful 2 hours spent with you, Tayla. And I really do appreciate it, because it's been such a heartfelt conversation right throughout, and such an honest conversation about what you've gone through to where you're at now, and towards the excitement of the World Cup next week, which is a very interesting time, and one that I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing more about and seeing you do well. But just the fact that you've got this opportunity and you're enjoying it. But I do appreciate you being so flexible and coming on so easily and making this happen, and to also be as honest and open as you have been. I think is a real true testament to who you are, and I think you'll personality defines who you are right throughout this conversation. Even on an online platform like we had, I could feel it as we've been talking. So, never take that away from yourself, never adjust that, always keep that going, and put that at the forefront, because I think that's going to take you very far in terms of what your aspirations are in life, and in terms of what you want to do, where you're going to go. But I'm so grateful that you've given up 2 hours of your time during your half term, in terms of time that could be utilized preparing for the World Cup and whatever things that you might have to do, right? But I really do appreciate it, and I hope that we can share your story and the connection of others, and looking at what support is out there for others, as well as what this podcast has been, which is about you, and this incredible journey which you've been on. But it's a true testament, because it's not easy to go through what you've been through, but the fact that you've overcome it and you've still got things that you want to do in life is unbelievable, and inspiration, right? But I am so grateful, and thank you very much.
No, thank you. I really appreciate you taking your time to want to listen and to put it on your podcast. And like I said, it is all about just getting it out there and showing others that anything is possible. And, there is people out there, and there is support out there that can help you.
Absolutely, and it's just about seeking that support. And there are networks out there, there are other people, and I think there's definitely scope for wider context in the future. But again, it's a big thank you from me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, rest of the week, and I wish you the very best for the World Cup, and enjoy the experience. And mum and dad can be very proud, and I'm sure that dad's going to take a lot away from it, and he might turn up with his own England coaching tracksuit with his initials on it and his own tactics board, right? But I think it'll be a great experience for the both of you, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. I will, and I can't wait. And yeah, he's already got his flag and his all of his kit and everything. He can't wait as well.
Very exciting times. But have a great time both, and take care, Tayla.
Thank you, and you.
Thank you.
But yeah, we try to be that group that can help be there for the players as a three, because I think you mentioned earlier, you want to have different characters in the changing room. You want to have different personalities. You don't want the same kind of people, because you're not going to be able to move forward. If you've got 10 people and they all agree the same things, you're going to get to a point in time where actually you're going to become unstuck. You need that one person to actually be like, nah, I don't agree with that. Or actually, we should try this. And I think that's why the huddle works, is we're all quite different as human beings. And I think you need 3 different people in there, because some players will naturally gravitate towards me and my personality, but equally some might go to the other 2, and that's absolutely fine.